All right. Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Monday. It is not a Carlos Monday. Carlos, under the weather today, could not make it. And I had a lot of errands, chores, and the like to do this morning, and I just wasn't ready at noon. I wasn't prepared to do today's program, so I put it off until 2. I hope this works out really well for you. I'm happy to do the program at this time. Normally, it will be at noon. However, tomorrow and Arlen Tuesday will be at 2 East Coast time because Arlen is on the West Coast at this point. I do urge you, please subscribe now. We continue to see growth in our numbers. It would be nice to see it go even faster, but Friday's video has done really, really well. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, why it seems to have attracted a big audience for which I don't really know. I'll tell you, if you do, let me know, 240-242-5646. I'll talk about what I think might be behind it, but I really have no idea. 240-242-5646. I would note that my show, and by the way, we're getting a caller right now, so we'll try to get that caller on in a moment. Caller, I just ask you to wait for 1 second. Let me see. I muted my guest, but I really want to mute my caller. Caller, we'll get to you in 1 sec, I promise. Just in terms of the Thursday show with Arlen, that had a really big 70 people, I think, were watching it live at some point or another, which for me is great. But it did not ultimately garner as many viewers over time as Friday's video. So I'm really curious about that. Would like to know what your thoughts are if you have any, if you want to share. But right now, let me see. Oh, our caller dropped off. Are you there, caller? No, I guess not. That's interesting. I can't quite figure that out. Maybe may have been promoting something, but I don't think so. I think they were a Halitics caller who was trying to get in. I've seen that number before. All right, 240-242-5646. And the title for today's program, Bait and Switch. And the reason I use that title is because I got criticism from a Thursday program viewer. Now that show, the Arlen program, we used as the thumbnail. I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here with thumbnails and all that stuff. Some people may not want to find it interesting. I kind of do as a YouTuber who's trying to build an audience. I find this stuff kind of interesting, of course. I do all the thumbnails myself. We use this thumbnail, and perhaps it did generate a big live audience. As I mentioned, it was very, very well subscribed to at 2, or actually it was 1 o'clock. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe the secret is to start the program at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. Eastern. Thursday did very, very well live. But one of the viewers wasn't really happy from watching it. They apparently really liked the title, David Brooks is leaving NYT. The picture of David Brooks is leaving NYT. That picture, of course, comes from the Epstein files. He was at a dinner with Epstein. I think it was around 2018, 2019. Sergey Brin in the background. Let me digress to Epstein real quick. You know, this all happened. So much of what we're reading in the Epstein files, or we're hearing about, and it's so disgusting. It really just reflects this incredible corruption at the very top of the planet, right? The richest, most powerful people around the world, Prince Andrew, what have you. Apparently, many Israelis, the defense minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, very close to Epstein. Noam Chomsky, intellectual heavyweight, Larry Summers, president of Harvard University. I mean, these are the two presidents. Again, I mentioned this before. Nothing screams at me more loudly, we must take wealth away from people. We must take, now it's hard. I could say we must take power. If you take wealth, you take power, because the power that people like Elon Musk and frankly Trump have is based almost completely on their wealth. Trump would have never become the famous, apprentice guy and been able to leverage that into becoming president if he hadn't been a billionaire. If we had sane, civilized, compassionate tax laws in this country where, people just couldn't really amass more than maybe $1 billion or so once you get above that $100 million mark in terms of income anyway, or once you get above 10 million, whatever it is, you're seeing 95, 99% of your salary, your income being taxed away. And obviously that would go for investment income as well. It becomes so much more difficult for people to aggregate the kind of the hundreds of billions that they are now using, people like Bezos, Larry Ellison, to control our media and completely pervert our democracy. That just couldn't happen. You couldn't get somebody like a Trump becoming president whose only real qualification is that, it's not a qualification, but he became president because he leveraged his fame as a reality TV star that only could have come about because he was so rich. And if he hadn't been so rich, he wouldn't have been able to become that reality TV star and then leverage that to become president. So I think nothing tells me more how important it is that we wrest wealth and power away from the tiny minority who have so much, and we redistribute it down. Nobody should have too much, and a few people do. They have far too much. And that's what this Epstein scandal proves beyond any peradventure to me, but it should also prove it to you. Didn't need to prove it to me. I already knew that. You should know it too. 240-242-5646. In any case, in any event, at least one of my, or maybe not my viewers, a one-time viewer, was intrigued enough by the thumbnail that says David Brooks is leaving NYT. Does it matter? They were intrigued enough by that thumbnail to tune into Halitics, and they were apparently surprised rudely when they didn't find David Brooks front and center throughout the program. I honestly found this, I was got to be honest with you, I was a little surprised by this criticism because we spent an incredible amount of time on that program, Arlen and I did. We focused on David Brooks from beginning pretty much until the very end. We talked about what his concerns were with the current state of the polity, why he said he was leaving, how depressing things were, how things had not gotten better, but had only gotten worse, despite the internet, which he had hoped would would usher in some kind of utopia, that we would have this kind of end of history as Francis Fukuyama predicted, with the ascendancy of capitalism, and it hasn't worked out that way. We talked all about that with Brooks. We talked about his connection to the Epstein files. We talked about the charge that he used his position as an op-ed writer in the New York Times to promote people like not Musk, but Bezos, whose pocket he was in, right? He was getting paid by a front group that Bezos was the major funder in, and then he didn't tell anybody, and then he wrote about the group in glowing terms. So all of this was in Thursday's program with Arlen, and yet Uncle George here was upset. He says 10 years in, I'm assuming it's a he with a name George, 10 minutes in, I haven't heard David yet. The title reports David Brooks, and yet no David. Goodbye. So was that a bait and switch? That's my question. I put Brooks front and center, and then according to Uncle George, and I got to be honest with you, I didn't go back and re-listen. I played around with it a little bit. I did check out some of what I had stated Thursday. I thought it was I really was happy with it, as was Arlen the Thursday show. But I didn't check to see if Uncle George correctly calculated the first 10 minutes don't include anything to do with David Brooks. Sometimes when Arlen and I talk and we get into, just as this program, there's some digression and how you doing, what's going on. We get a weather report. Uncle George didn't want to hear any of that. He's wondering, well, this is my advice to you, Uncle George, if you're watching now, if you're listening now, and you see a thumbnail and you're intrigued, and then you turn to Halitics, you click it on, and you don't immediately hear and see what you want, flip around. You've got a little a pointer there. You've got a cursor, or your finger if you're using an iPhone or a Android, scroll forward a little bit. There's also a transcript. This is something I do all the time with my YouTube video. Well, not with mine, but when I'm looking for content that I want to share with you, I'll often go into the transcript and then I'll do a search. I'll use a search engine within the YouTube video to find the segment that is pertinent to what I'm discussing. So those are some options for you. I don't think there was any bait and switch. I didn't try to entice you to watch Halitics Thursday with promises of David Brooks and then pull the rug out from under you. I really don't think I did that. So I'm going to reject the charge, bait and switch, at least when it relates to Thursday's Halitics that centered David Brooks as topic. He was the topic. It wasn't unfair. Now, how about this? Now, I do see, I have to say, and I use the term, or I use the, what is it? What is it I'm trying to use here? The meme or the theme, I guess is the right word, bait and switch, because I see this all the time in YouTube videos. They're always trying to get you to click. It's all so much clickbait, and they use certain loaded terms consistently. Owned, like, right? So-and-so owned, humiliated, Trump humiliated, Kamala owned by MAGA, right? I mean, you see that all the time. And here's one that, another buzzword, panics. So one of my faves, I really, really like Katie Halper. This is the Katie Halper show. She's got Branko Marchetic on, I believe. He writes for the Jacobin, which, by the way, I'm still angry at the Jacobin. I've submitted several pieces to the Jacobin, and I think they were really good. I got to tell you, some of my best work. And they've never once published anything, and I'm not happy about that. I will note that I got one very polite rejection telling me they really liked it. The piece I had written was about the Clintons. It was about Hillary Clinton in 2016 and about Bill as well. And they said they really liked it, but they'd already been posting quite a bit about Clinton at that point, and they were holding off. So, all right, I kind of accept that. Still wasn't thrilled. Thought it was better than what they'd been posting, whatever. But there's Branko Marchetic, and you see this all the time. So-and-so panics, right? Like WNBA panics with, half empty stadiums since Caitlin Clark went down with an injury. I remember that headline a lot. Gates panics. Bill Gates panics as sales of Windows 11 crater. I mean, you see this all the time. And there's all this schadenfreude because people, when they see that, they're hoping, right? I want Israel to panic. Wouldn't that be great? If Israel panics, we want Israel to panic. Wouldn't that be great if this centibillionaire Bill Gates is panicking? Bezos is panicking over the Washington Post, whatever. I mean, that's what we want to believe it. We really, really want to believe it. And we also want to see it, hear it. We want the quote. So I wanted the quote, and I really like Katie Halper. I was actually I guess she did with Max Blumenthal and several other internet lefty luminaries. Sabby Sabs were in New Jersey. What was it, last year, I guess, I drove up there. I can't remember when I went up there. It must have been it was in October, I believe, because then I went from that event to canvas for Mom Donnie. I believe that was in October, before the election, obviously, for New York City mayor. So I did actually talk to Katie Halper and Max. I thought they were good. They were fine. I mean, I got no issue. They do really good work, and Max is an incredible reporter, and we learned so much from reading his stuff. And, I don't do that. I just don't. I mean, I don't have that reporter doggedness gene, whatever, to go out there and get new information. I just do these commentaries, which for me is a lot easier and preferred. But I like Katie, and I think she's really funny. And I thought when I read this headline, this title, Israel panics, there probably is something in there, right? There's something where you could kind of justify that title. You know, maybe, I don't know, Netanyahu caught at press conference or whatever that would suggest that they're reconsidering the strategy, because there's no question there is this Epstein-Russia ploy. What's going on there is Israel, more than any other country, probably more than the United States even, maybe not. I mean, there are more Americans are for sure going to be mentioned in the Epstein files than anybody else. But in terms of direct connections to a foreign government, Israel's way ahead of any other country when it comes to how Epstein leveraged, his connections to underage girls, to his ability to connect powerful people, powerful men with adolescents, right? I mean, that's what propelled Jeffrey Epstein to the very top of the world in terms of, connection to influence, to power. And he had a great amount of power. Now he's dead. I mean, he was, is there any doubt, by the way, does anyone doubt that he was murdered? I mean, how could there be any question about it? Obviously, he knew far too much about the most powerful people in the world to live. And he had a great incentive to finally divulge it, to release it, because he was in jail. He was facing the rest of his life behind bars. Maybe he could use that knowledge, that information he had to get a release or early release, right? I mean, that would be the clear incentive. And also maybe there was some guilt, or maybe he was just bitter. He was just angry. How come I'm stuck here on Rikers, in Rikers, both, because it's an island and it's also a jail. So I'm stuck in Rikers jail on Rikers Island. And, Trump is president. He's, large and in charge. And he was right there with me. And then he had the nerve to dump me when he thought I was no longer valuable to him. Clinton, all these people, royalty, defense minister of Israel, they're all going around living their life, having happy as clams. And I'm stuck in Rikers on Rikers. I'm going to do something about it, right? So they had to kill him. I don't know how there could be any doubt about that. 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you if you haven't. If you'd like to comment, if you have something you'd like to say, if something I've said rubs you the right way, rubs you the wrong way, would love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. I didn't find any panicking in Katie Halper's video. I went through it. I actually did. I told you that I often do searches to find words within the transcripts to see whether, there is a conversation such as Israel panicking, Bibi panicking, somebody panicking. The word panic is not in that video. It's on the title. Now, what's the Russia ploy? The Russia ploy is, of course, what we're seeing from media. And they spent an inordinate amount of time, I believe, in that video playing from Morning Joe, where he goes on and on and on, expounding on the likelihood that Russia was very closely connected to Epstein, that Russia has all sorts of dirt on powerful people around the world because it learned the information from Epstein, and that Russia was the whisperer into Epstein's ears. That's sort of the Morning Joe. I wouldn't say it's exactly stated that way, but that's kind of the hand-wringing. Oh no, Epstein must have been, he was hanging out with Putin. We can't exactly prove that, but there were Russians who went to that island of his, Tepeto Island. There were Russians he went to visit in St. Petersburg, so therefore Russia must be involved. When yes, there were some Russians, but there were so many more Israelis, and there were the Israelis at the very top of the tree. And he was, Epstein's right-hand woman was Ghislaine Maxwell, and her father was given a state funeral in Israel. She has tremendously close ties to the Israeli government and the most powerful people in Israel. It seems clear that in terms of just who Epstein met with in Israel, that he was providing information to the Mossad and maybe the other way around, the Secret Service there that frequently kills people. So if the distraction strategy, the bait and switch strategy that Israel might be using, or that Israel allies in media, hey, look at what's in the Epstein files, we're going to talk all about it, and you think they're going to talk about Israel, and then they're like, hey, what about Russia? Russia. So that's the bait and switch the media has been engaging in. I watched that video, I went through the transcript. There's nothing there that tells you either that this Russia ploy is backfiring or that Israel's panicking. Now, the Russia ploy, nobody believes it. You could say it's backfiring, but that's kind of crazy to say because it's not like people believed it. Oh yeah, Russia must be involved. And then they're like, oh wait, they're not. So it is Israel, right? Backfiring is when you try to help one person and you wind up helping the person you didn't want to help. That's a backfire. Like we talked about this on Friday's program, which was that AIPAC's ploy to take down Tom Malinowski, because he was insufficiently pro-Israel, and to elect or to nominate Tahisha Way for the vacant Congress seat that was Mikey Sherrill's. That plan backfired, arguably. I'm not even sure it did, but you could argue it backfired because instead of getting Tahisha Way, whom AIPAC wanted, it looks like they did get the nominee is in fact, now I can't remember. Obviously, I'm having Ana Lilia Mejia, who they didn't want. So that's backfiring. The Russia ploy would backfire if people are looking at these videos or these, fake news people like Morning Joe telling them that Russia was involved and saying, wait, no, it's not Russia, it must be Israel. But that's only if, because of the ploy, people start blaming Israel, start attributing Epstein's actions to Israel. But in fact, everyone thought that. No one's changed their mind. We all get it. Epstein was closely tied to the genocidal state of Israel. And everyone still thinks that. Nobody's changed their mind. The ploy didn't backfire, didn't make more people mad at Israel. And there's no evidence that at least is adduced or that I've seen that Israel's panicking. They're just going to keep presenting their Hasbara. So to me, that's a huge bait and switch by Katie Halper. I don't like it. I don't like when hosts do that, because then I lose confidence in them. I have to spend time clicking on a video that I suspect may not contain the information that I'm hoping to find, and waste my time on something so I will stop watching. I'll become very skeptical of the videos posted by that host. So that to me is really bad bait and switch. And I'm sorry, because I like Katie a lot, but I want to be able to rely. I really, really wanted to see evidence of panicking by Israel, and I didn't. All right, 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. So I'm, why was that program kind of a hit? Why is my Friday free-for-all doing as well as as it is? I'm pleased, now well over 600 views. which is for me really, really good. I mean, I wish they all were getting there. I'm hoping this will get to 1,000, maybe not. But and by the way, help me get to 500 subscribers. I'm at 477. Help me get to 500, and hopefully I'll start getting a little bit of money. I'm going to just move my mic down a little bit so you don't see that Sure logo quite as obviously. One of the biggest factors I've been told, apparently every single YouTuber learns, or every single aspiring YouTuber learns from the get-go. A professor told me this, a professor of new media told me this, and I believed it. I knew it. I certainly thought I knew it before he told me this, that the thumbnail is incredibly important. It's a huge factor in how well a video does that thumbnail grab people's attention? So this is my standard issue Friday free-for-all video, a thumbnail. I use it to maintain consistency because part of my brand, to the extent I have one, and going back to the Monterey days, is we want to hear from you Fridays, especially. We're going to talk about the stories that we address during the week. We're not necessarily going to, if there's breaking news, obviously we'll cover it, but it's sort of more a little bit meta too, where we cover what we already covered. So this is hardly a, breaking news style thumbnail. And in fact, the professor to whom I'm referring to had said that this might not be the best thumbnail to use. It's not going to grab people's attention. But he did have to acknowledge when he was looking, this was maybe a year ago or more when I was talking to this professor, he did say, well, but some of those Fridays do perform really well. But it's not the thumbnail. Maybe they perform pretty well. I do Fridays, some of my Friday shows do well, but it's not because of the thumbnail. So what could it be? Because I just wanted to show you that thumbnail. That's clearly not it. And I think I sort of thought, well, the other thing that really matters, the two things that matter most, the thumbnail and the title. So we can say the thumbnail doesn't matter. What about the title? Well, the title for this program, the one that, is up to 648 right now views, AIPAC helps progressive win NJ special. Trump admin still protecting pedos, shameless New York Times, shameless NYT. I think that's a good title. It's bite-sized. I think it helps. I think the AIPAC helps progressive win NJ special. I'm sure that helped. That's sort of that Schadenfreude, right? We all hate, or at least people who watch my videos, and most Americans really hate AIPAC, don't trust it. So if they screw up, if their actions help somebody they almost certainly weren't trying to help, that's interesting, right? That's kind of the dog bites man story, right? Because if AIPAC helps, Zionist supporter win, nobody's, well, okay, of course. But AIPAC helps progressive win. Okay, there's a little bit of irony there. So that may be part of it. Trump admin still protecting pedos. So yeah, people, that's always going to be, that's sex, right? Because a pedophile, somebody who has sex with a minor. So yeah, or I mean, really, I always thought a pedophile, it's not even a minor, it's someone who's pre-adolescent. But I think the term can be used kind of interchangeably. So that's going to grab attention. And shameless NYT, a lot of people don't like the New York Times. You're going to criticize New York Times, it's going to grab some people's attention. So I'm sure the title did not hurt at all. I'm not sure if I can attribute the good audience to that completely. I have one other thought. That was a relatively short video for me. Most of my videos have been lately over an hour. This one clocked in at a svelte 56 minutes, 39 seconds. And there may be something to do. I don't think viewers are looking at that. Maybe they are. Maybe they're saying, hey, Hal, your videos are too long, but that one's not even an hour, so I'm going to check it out. There may be some of that. I think it also may be something to do with the algorithm. Maybe YouTube is like, yeah, we'll promote that more because it's under an hour. So we're going to see. I will actually probably keep this program just under an hour as well, and we'll see how it performs. 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. More comments, right? Again, now this is not a free-for-all. This is a Monday show. We have no Carlos. I would have just loved to talk about this with Carlos. Well, I don't know if I would have loved to, but it relates to Carlos. It has to do with the program we did last week, which was, do we still need Black History Month? Or is there value? I can't remember. Is there value in Black History Month? Something of that sort. And this comment, I really want to send. Well, first of all, I mean, I like to send in my comments because whenever there's a comment, I want people to know what their other viewers are thinking. Like one was thinking, "You're not talking about David Brooks. I don't want to watch your video." So here, a Jalia Bird, I think is who that is. Jalia Bird. I don't know who they are. Their response to the video where Carlos and I didn't say there shouldn't be Black History Month, and neither did Carlos. In fact, we both kind of came down to the same place, which was, well, Black history is American history. It should be just part of the curriculum, period. But since many times the importance of African Americans, both, individual bold-faced names like W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, maybe, I don't mention Dr. King because I hope he's getting his due in school. I hope kids are learning about Dr. King. Maybe they're not. I mean, they should be. We should be teaching Dr. King. But many other Black Americans' history is definitely not getting the shrift it deserves. And I think what's even a bigger problem, not even so much the individual Black person isn't necessarily centered, but that the Black experiences, and obviously there are as many Black experiences as there are Black Americans, but there are still certain common places that I think Black people have experience in terms of prejudice, racism, more likely to be born into poverty, more likely to die in poverty. So there are certain aspects of the Black experience that are generally, in common that Black people share that white people don't. And I think that it should really, really, really be taught. Even more so than, again, and I don't mean to make light of, but like a George Washington Carver, yes, he was an important scientist, no question about it. He should be discussed, but it almost feels like you're siloing Black people by singling them out in certain contexts for study. But in terms of the actual experience that Blacks in this country have undergone, often a very, very horrific experience, I think that needs to be incorporated into the general American history curriculum. I'm not sure it is. And to the extent it is not, that is why we need Black American History Month, Black History Month. But this is what Jalia Bird writes. Black American History Month is not the business of non-Black American people or Blacks who are getting validation from YTs. So I think YTs is YouTubers, meaning me, and the Black who's allegedly getting validation from YouTubers is Carlos. So I thought that was that's the kind of comment that I think is very not helpful. What is taught in our public schools? Well, it's all of our business. It's not, I understand that the reactions and the preferences of Black Americans when it comes to teaching Black History Month should, I believe, be given priority. And I think educators do that. I don't think there's any question. But what we teach in our schools is all of our businesses. No one should be taking a back seat, should be saying, no, I'm not going to, or shouldn't be part of the conversation, part of the dialogue. I'm certainly going to, if we were talking about Holocaust education, Jalia Bird, and you said, well, I don't really think that's what we should be spending a lot of time on in schools. That's fine. Even if you said, well, I'm not Jewish, I'm going to assume you're Black from your comment. Of course, you should be weighing in with respect to what we teach in our public schools. Let's say there's a discussion about the way the indigenous peoples are portrayed. And folks are saying, well, we don't present them sympathetically enough. And we don't spend enough time discussing the indigenous people's experience before European colonialists got here and after. And someone says, no, we spend far too much time on that. Well, I might really disagree with you. I might say, no, you're wrong. But you still get to express that opinion, and then presumably you hopefully you can justify it, and then hopefully, presuming you're wrong, the majority decides to go in a different direction. But I would never say you don't get to weigh in. Of course you get to weigh in. I think most people of good faith, if you were having a school board meeting, let's make it about indigenous peoples, and you had some indigenous educator or educators come in and say, well, we've reviewed the curriculum, and here's where we think it doesn't really fully or adequately represent the Native American experience. And then someone else comes back and says, well, here's why I disagree. I think most people who go to those meetings in good faith would be able to hear the arguments, listen to them, and presumably would recognize that the indigenous educators have a stake in the outcome and are more likely perhaps to be more fully aware of, fully understanding of the situation, and might give their view more weight. But that doesn't mean they get to make the decision. We all make the decision. That's what being in a democracy is about. So I have a real problem with somebody who says things like, it's not your business. You don't get to talk about that. No, you all get to talk about it. I wanted to talk about this win in Howard County over ICE. But I'll get to that in a moment, because since we're on the subject of race, I thought this was a really interesting, I don't know, it's not interesting. I mean, Trump is so disgusting. And, we had this horrible video, I guess, where he depicts Obama and the Obamas as apes on Truth Social. And do I think that's racist? Of course it is. Is there any question? No. I mean, that's sort of been a trope forever, right? So it's horrible. What's the right response? I mean, Trump won't apologize. I think it's politically savvy for Trump not to apologize. You look weak when you apologize, especially to many of his supporters, his MAGA supporters. They don't ever want him to bend the knee. We've seen this so many times in posts online, on the internet. There's just so much glee on the right whenever Trump owns the left, or as they perceive it. And for him to say, oh no, I shouldn't have done it, I was this, I was that, it would hurt him with his base. And he's not going to do that. Plus, he's also such an insecure person. Apologizing for him is just such a tantamount to being weak and a loser. So he won't do it. But I think on the left, we make a mistake. We harp on this to say, oh, Trump is such a bigot, he's such a racist, and look, he's so clueless, he won't even apologize. I think we make a big mistake. People who recognize Trump as a racist and a bigot and all the bad things that he is, they're not going to support him. They're not going to, I didn't vote for him. You say, well, hell, you should, you didn't vote against him. Well, I did, but you didn't vote for Kamala. So therefore you kind of did. No, I knew just how bad Trump was, but I also knew how bad Kamala was. That's why I wouldn't vote for her. We can spend our time demonizing Trump, But we're not going to convince anybody who's a Trump supporter if we call him a racist, because people who are looking at Trump through that lens aren't going to support him. Now, some people would say, well, but black people support him now. Latinos are moving. First they supported him, now they're not. Latinos supported Trump when he had some comment called Puerto Rico a garbage island, right? That didn't stop him. A racist remark here or there isn't going to prevent a person from voting for a candidate if they believe that candidate will make their life better. It just won't. You're not going to find a person, a Latino, a black person, if they believe in their heart that Trump's policies are going to improve the quality of their family's life. And someone says, well, but he's such a racist. He said Obama wasn't born in this country. And they're going to say, what do I care about Obama? Obama's super rich. Obama's privileged. Obama's elite. I'm caring about my family. That's what I care about. The way you beat Trump is you point out that his policies are hurting you. You talk to people and you say, no, but he's bad for you. What he's doing isn't helping you. It's not making your life better. And if you want to talk about Trump being a racist, then that's how you do it. You say, yeah, why do you think he's tweeting about Obama? Because his policies suck. Because he's making life worse for you. Because he promised you he would get us out of Ukraine, Russia, and he's starting to commit more money to more of our money to go there. Because he's even worse when it comes to Israel than Biden Harris was. Because he's slashing healthcare subsidies, which means you're going to have to pay more for healthcare if you can even get it, if you can even afford it at all. Because jobless, because we're not creating any jobs in America. So that's why he's playing games with the Obamas, because he's trying to distract and fool people. That's why. That's the argument that can win. Not, oh, poor Obama. Nobody gives a crap about the Obamas. Nobody views them as victims. If you spend all your time complaining that, oh, Trump misrepresented them, you're going to lose. If you say, yeah, Trump is trying to appeal to people based on racism because he's hurt the everyday Americans, because his policies are bad, because he promised one thing and he's delivering something totally different. That's the way to use Trump's bad behaviors against him. I mean, I think Trump is smart to go after Obama, to be honest with you, because the Obamas actually are elite. They do symbolize really a sinister interlocking of the, corporate elites, the military industrial complex, and all of that. There's no question. Trump is very smart to focus people on a Democratic president who did not deliver. So you won't think about him as a Republican president who's completely failed to deliver. That's the way you respond to Trump. No, you're not, that's fine. You want to talk about Obama? We get it. Because your presidency sucks, because you're a bad president, because you're a liar, because you've used this office to enrich yourself, to reward your friends, to make life even harder for working class Americans. That's what you've done. You campaigned on something different. You didn't deliver. And that's why you're now trying to fool us into thinking the real problem is Obama. That's how you win. All right, 240-242-5646. I didn't watch the video. I watched some of the Super Bowl. I will confess. I turned off the ad. As soon as there were ads, I didn't watch for a second. I never find the Super Bowl ads that interesting. There have been a few, I guess I thought were good, but never from watching the Super Bowl. Maybe just I saw them in advance or I saw them after the fact. I don't like this guy, Robert Kraft, at all. Not sure if he's in the Epstein files. He may be. He's clearly a Zionist. He's a big supporter of Israel. He spent a lot of money. See, what I find so offensive about many things. Kraft tries to center anti-Semitism as a big problem. This is a guy who's like one of the richest, most powerful people in the world. How can you legitimately be crying about anti-Semitism when your life is so much better than just about everybody else's? And I think that's a problem that those who want to go after Trump for his racist Obama ad run up against the same issue. Well, you're defending, Trump was targeting the Obamas incredibly well. They're not as wealthy as Robert Kraft. They're not as wealthy as Trump, but probably worth over $100 million at this point. So this is a family that's just so much richer than just about everybody else, the Obamas. And they weren't wealthy before. I guess she was, they were Harvard lawyers. They had a lot of earning potential. I think Michelle Obama had been in a big law firm for a while, but then she stopped. So they are not wealthy. One of the least wealthy, I think, in recent years, presidents, right? At least when he was elected. There's no question about that. Biden wasn't rich either. But now they are rich. And that's who Trump went after. And I think it's really hard to gin up a lot of sympathy for them. It's smart of Trump to go after elites. He's elite himself, but he wants to, it's a jujitsu move. Okay, as of 2026, Barack Obama's estimated net worth is reported to be around $70 million. So not quite 100, which is what I said. But just, people think when they see 70 million, well, that's nothing. That's nothing compared to Bezos or Larry Ellison, who's got 250 billion, or Trump, who's got 6 or 7 billion, right? Obama's net worth is 1/100th of Trump's. $70 million is so much money. It's so much more than almost anybody else will ever, very few people will ever see anything like it. So racism a terrible problem, but when you make Obama the face of the victim, as Trump did, you make it harder for average, everyday Americans who are barely surviving to have too much sympathy. That's exactly what I thought when I heard about this Robert Kraft ad. Robert Kraft is a billionaire. I don't know what he's worth. I mean, he must be 10 billion, right? Because the Patriots alone are worth that much money. He was a big finance guy. And I'm like, oh my God, this incredibly rich, privileged, elite Jew is going to do an ad about anti-Semitism. I didn't watch the ad when it was on last night, but I started to think, well, maybe it's not that bad when I saw that a lot of the Jewish media, this is the Jewish Forward, which is supposed to be a little more progressive, but others as well, Jewish Insider, which is much further to the right, they were criticizing this ad. They didn't think it was so good. They didn't like it. It was like sort of a 20th century caricature, according to them, according to the Forward, according to the Jewish Daily Insider. Kraft's ad was a caricature of 20th century anti-Semitism. And I thought, well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe he's not going to equate criticism of Israel, right, as anti-Semitism. Because, my fear was you'd see in the ad protesters at Columbia shouting, down with Zionists, that kind of thing, or show images from October 7th and then find somebody who chanted pro-Hamas. Cheers, right? That would be just complete BS. But that's not what Kraft was doing here. Kraft actually picked a pretty sort of kind of credible victim of anti-Semitism. Now, this ad kind of reminded me a little bit of when I was in high school because you have the smaller kid kind of getting pushed around in the hallway, and he's being picked on, and partly because he's Jewish, or at least that's the hook, right? We're going to go after you because you're Jewish. And my sons and I have discussed this. Kids are going to find your weak spot. They're going to look for something. Not every kid, but some kids in high school are like piranhas, and they're going to find your weak spot. Now, they may not give a rat's fat butt if you're Jewish or gay or whatever it is. But if you're different in some way, they're going to use that difference to hurt you. And that's sort of what my takeaway is from this ad. But this ad, I think, wasn't bad because I think it legitimately does present a realistic take of high school to a degree.
Loser. Dude.
Did you see that? Should we challenge? So bad.
Oh, bro, look at him. Oh my gosh.
It's not funny.
Do not listen to that.
Thank you, man.
I know.
So I actually have to say, I don't think that's a bad ad. I mean, that could happen. That is not totally beyond the realm of potential possibility. And that kid is a victim in that circumstance, and he's somebody that you could see as a victim. And Kraft isn't trying to leverage, at least in the ad. I'm not saying it isn't his ultimate goal, but he isn't leveraging in that ad anything like, okay, well, we have to support Israel because some kid could get picked on because he's Jewish. Because all of that would be complete bull. But yeah, kids do get picked on, and that's one way that they're picked on. And I think it was kind of nice that he put the black kid in with a Jewish kid. It was kind of nice. I have one other point. Now, what Kraft did that was really smart there is that he chose as the person you're supposed to feel sympathy for, somebody you would feel sympathy for. Right? Like when Trump goes after Obama, people aren't going to have sympathy for Obama. So that's smart of Trump because he's not picking some struggling, hardworking African-American who's trying to make it and people would have a lot of empathy for. He's picking this incredibly powerful world leader who a lot of people were mad at because he didn't deliver. So it's hard, you want to go attack Trump for criticizing the Obamas. It's a double-edged sword because you're reminding people of the Obamas. Kraft there wisely chooses a short, small Jewish kid who we could all definitely perceive as being bullied. So here's Kraft's with one more comment, which I actually have to say I kind of like.
Jewish students with black students?
Because historically we had that connection. It's a connection that's gotten a lot done. And I think we can continue to get a lot done if we come together.
Is there a word?
So I have now look, it's smart what he's doing. Now to me, I'm all about economics, right? My whole shtick is reduce wealth and income inequalities tremendously to the point where everyone has enough and no one has too much. I'm so about that. I don't fool myself into believing that would eliminate all hate. I mean, we're always going to find ways to view ourselves as better than others and our tribe is better than the other tribe. But a huge impetus behind that, our tribalism evolved because tribalism gives you the justification for stealing somebody else's land, for raping their women, for taking what was theirs. But if everyone is pretty much the same, then you don't get a lot. You try to steal somebody's land, well, everyone's going to say, well, wait a second, why do you have all that wealth? We need to tax it all away from you then. There's far less advantage to being a robber baron, to being an Elon Musk, You get far less out of life when you do that to being like a Trump who's constantly screwing people in deals, or at least trying to, stealing from your investors, which he did. You get less out of it, right? You're Sam Walton, you put every small business, every grocery out of business from, Bentonville, Arkansas to Frankfort, Kentucky. Well, you're not going to get as rich as you got. It's not going to make you that big a pile of money. So the incentive to be a bad guy is reduced when you have, as a backdrop, a world where all have enough and none have too much. That's where I want Robert Kraft to spend his money, but he will never do that because he's got way too much. He doesn't want to not have. He doesn't want to go to a world where no one has too much, because then he wouldn't have too much. But he does say this, and I think it's kind of okay.
You would also want Palestinian students in this country to be part of that dinner or that conversation.
Absolutely.
And why do you think it's important to have them there too?
Because I want them to understand and be educated to the other side, and the other side to be educated to them.
All right, I'll stop it there. So look, it's definitely a false equivalency to say, well, they can learn from us, we can learn from them. But there's also truth to it. What Kraft said there is better than what most Zionists say. He said, I do want Palestinians to be, because he was talking about blacks and Jews have a historical alliance, and they got a lot done. I guess they're referring to civil rights and even laws that, that were ultimately passed to protect Jewish people. Like some of the discrimination in public accommodations was used to keep Jews out just as much as to keep blacks out, depending on what the accommodations were. Certain housing covenants said no Jews, country clubs, and the like. Now, I don't equate that, right? Not getting to join an elite country club isn't quite the same as not being able to buy a home in a working class neighborhood. They're not the same. One's a lot worse, being prevented from buying a home. But still, discrimination to a degree is discrimination. And when Kraft says in his ads, yeah, blacks and Jews got together and got a lot done, it's fair. Now, what I want him to promote is an end to inequality, or at least the kind of inequality we have now, where Jews are really at the top and African Americans are towards the bottom. It's not right. That's the real way to bring back that alliance. But it's not completely false what he said. And I like the answer when he said, well, I want Palestinians to understand what Jews go through, but we also need to know what they're going through. That was actually a pretty good thing to say. I give him some real, props to you, Kraft, for that. All right, 240-242-5646. Getting towards the end of the program. I don't think it's told you I'm going to try to keep this show at under an hour. I think we're about 58 minutes now. So with that, actually, we will call it a Monday Halitics. I will return tomorrow, and it will not, unless, I hope Arlen's not sick the way, not under the weather. Would love to have Arlen tomorrow. We had a good show last week. I thought Thursday. We'll have it tomorrow. It'll be a Tuesday with Arlen unless something happens. We're also looking forward to get Dave Chapman on to talk about resisting ICE. Enjoy your afternoon. Thank you so much for being part of Halitics.